Good morning, y'all. My name is Anna Holder. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the chair of this safety work group. Thank you for joining us this October 29th, 2025. We've got an awesome agenda to go through together, but there's a lot of other things happening in the world right now. We've got the Estuary Conference, the California Bioassessment Work Group meeting is happening around the same time. So we might have a light attendance, but that just means the people that are here can, take up more space and contribute more. So welcome. Before we dive in, those that have been to the stew for a while know that I like to start our time with a land acknowledgement to just kind of like center us and frame our thoughts. The Cali PA building and the hub of this work group is located in a place that we now call Sacramento, California, which was and still is a gathering place for many local tribes who have lived throughout the Central Valley and the foothills since time immemorial, time before time, and are the original stewards of these lands and waters. These people include the Nishanan, Maidu, and Miwok peoples and the Putwin and Wintun nations, who have remained committed to the stewardship of these lands and waters over many, many centuries. And it's important for us to recognize that our organization sits on the tribal lands of Indigenous peoples and that we are here because of the sacrifices that have been forced upon them. And in acknowledging and remembering these sovereign nations and their communities in all of the work we do, particularly as we think about and plan for the future of bioaccumulation monitoring in California and the work of this work group, and our partnerships and how we prioritize our resources and time, we hope to honor their legacies, their lives, and their descendants. If you're not sure whose land you're on, the nativeland.ca resource is really great and recommend checking out. It's got lots of good stuff. All right, who is with us today? I'll do a roll call. We got a small but mighty team with us today, so feel free to unmute, say hi, and I'll go through the list. Do we have anyone from our peer review panel? I don't think so. Okay, US EPA. Okay. OEHA.
Hello, Wes here from OEHA.
And Fan from OEHA.
Welcome, welcome. Moss Landing. Regional board folks. That's right. I usually tell you what regions. Region 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, Emily Duncan here. Good morning.
5.
Good morning, Lauren Lelis.
Welcome back, Lauren. 6.
Oh, we have a couple other staff from Region 5 actually on the call. So
great.
they're representing today.
Good. Showing up. I love it. Who else is from Region 5?
Hi,
Heather. Heather Stephanie also with Region 5.
Awesome.
and I'm Emma Lochner from Region 5 as well. So.
Thanks for joining us, y'all.
Hi, Kelly Huck from Region 6.
Oh my gosh, you already knew I was going to go to 6 next. Great.
I guess.
Not just a hat rack, Kelly. So smart. Anyone else from Region 6? Region 7? Region 8?
Hey, this is Heather Boyd.
Hey, Heather, welcome.
Thanks.
Region 9. All right. State board folks, any region, division, or office?
Jennifer Salisbury.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hi. Monitoring Council, the new director, Lori Rebler, will be joining us soon, before 10, I think. Anyone from California Tribe? Okay. And we've got other folks saying hi in the chat. Welcome, welcome. All right, so we're gonna go through our usual quick updates. There will be a time at the end of this for anyone to share a bioaccumulation related update. So feel free to raise your hand if you wanna share something that we haven't covered and let us know what's happening in your world. Emily is going to tell us about some work that they've been doing for subsistence fishing surveys in urban lakes. Angie Norda will be joining us from the Department of DFA Financial Assistance, who's going to give us our annual update on what's happening with AB 762, which provides funding for posting fish and shellfish advisories near water bodies. I'm going to give an update on the data from the San Diego region realignment. We finally got all of it back and wrote a report, so I'm going to walk folks through that. And then we'll wrap thinking about how we want to meet next year. And that'll be it. So it's going to be great. I'll try and get everyone out of here before 12. I think that's what I said on the agenda. So let's get started. Data. Jennifer has been working really hard with our different labs to get the statewide bioaccumulation tissue data up to date and available in CDN. A couple of years ago, we had a really long backlog and we're closing the gap. So all of the 2022 data is available. So the Region 9 realignment, as well as a special project from the Central Coast region. Next up is the organics data from our Panel 5 lakes, and that should be done next month. Then we'll be moving to 2024. Metals data from the coast was completed. That's available in CDN now. It has been available since July. And we'll work on organics. The different data reports, cruise reports, and things like that are linked on the right side. And I think that's everything. Yeah, so we'll keep providing updates on these. I know we aren't meeting as frequently. So as things get completed over time, for the 2024 data and other things, I might send out like updates over the Stu email list as appropriate, maybe a quarterly rate or something like that. All right. OEHA has been rolling out fish advisories. There's a list of the ones that I've been keeping track of since the last time we met, but I'll pass it over to Wes to see if I missed anything and if you want to give us a sneak peek on what's next.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, I think you captured it properly and have everything listed there. We're currently, the next one that should be coming out will be Mammoth Creek. So that should be sometime in November. And the next item, the OEHA Fish Consumption Advisory Priorities for 2026, I think Anna will be putting in a poll. So we just want to get your feedback on our short list of advisories that we're planning for 2026. And these were chosen based on our prioritization protocol. But we would also like to get feedback from everyone involved here, just in case there's some additional reasons why we should produce one advisory over the other one.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to launch the poll in a second. It's going to be a Slido poll. So if you have your phone, you can use a QR code to pull it up. If you're on a laptop, you can go to slido.com, and the next slide will have the survey code. And this poll will remain open for 1 week. So if you have people on your team that you would like to contribute to the poll, I'll send it out through an email update as soon as the recording and everything is ready to go, so we can get lots of people to give us their thoughts. So this is the QR code, and I'll give folks a minute to get situated.
Yeah, and you can also put in the chat or contact any of us if there's other water bodies that you'd like to get additional information or get on the prioritized list.
Yeah, so the poll is active, so you should be able to put in your top 5 advisories, and there is an other option. So if you want to pick other, go ahead and select that, and then maybe add the location that you're looking for in the chat, so we can capture that for OEHA folks. And I was gonna wait. There we go. So as people add their preferences, they'll show up here. I'll give folks a minute or two.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, I don't see the raise hand in Zoom. So are we to vote I mean, there's just one, I'm in Region 6 and there's one lake. Am I to vote, or is it going to be prioritized each region gets a certain amount, or I guess I'm a little...
Everyone here can select up to 5. So if you don't want that in your region, but you really want Bass Lakes to have an advisory, you could select that one. You could select whatever you'd like.
Okay,
And
I'm
all of
just
the
curious,
responses-
moving forward, it's just for the next set of advisories, is there going to be each region gets some, or is it going to be just this vote? Or I guess I'm a little confused.
No, this is a tentative list too. I should have made that caveat earlier. There's other things that come up when we're developing the advisory as we look closer at the data. So this is just kind of our short list based on our prioritization, and part of that is trying to equitably distribute between the regions advisories we have sufficient data for.
Okay.
Hi, can I ask a question? Wes, what district is Lake Arrowhead in?
6.
6?
Yeah, 6.
Okay, and so when I click on other, how do I fill in that I'd like more Southern California lakes in general seen on this list?
I think you just did it by
Yeah, and
telling us.
can add what you want in the chat, or probably be the best way to capture it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And hey, Wes, sorry, one more from Kelly. Is it possible, before you kind of gave us a list of lakes that you had kind of a reasonable amount of data for in our region, so that's would really weigh on our, we're not going to pick a lake that has no data and then it will not get prioritized. So is there any way you could provide regionally, which lakes might have enough, and then if we have a compelling reason that we prefer that lake over another, we could tell you that? Or
Yeah, if you want to actually, I can have Lauren or I can contact you and we can discuss that offline.
okay, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, that's a little more thorough discussion.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, there's 18 of us, but only 5 have completed the poll. Everyone here has a right to complete the poll. We want to hear your thoughts. But for the sake of time.
Anna?
Yeah.
I had another question, sort of like what Kelly was asking. So I think you're going to talk about it later on, about the PFAS project. So that would probably weigh in as well, because I think that we had some older data that we had analyzed for PFAS, but I don't remember the lakes offhand or whatever. So,
Yeah, and that data won't be available until mid to late next year, probably. TBD. We're still waiting for some of it to come back from the lab, I think. So this list is OEHA has the data now, and they can start making advisories. And I don't know, Wes, if you want to give an update on PFAS ATL goodness, since we're talking about it.
Yeah, so there's, I guess, a race between PFAS data and our PFAS ATL, which we'll use as the basis for any advisories, which we're more than halfway through. We're waiting for some other other stuff we need to take care of before we finish that off. But hopefully sooner than later is we're really pushing to get it out there. So just so we can win the race and get that out there before the archive project is complete, so we can be, you know, more situated to evaluate that data.
So probably by next year or mid to late next year, Wes?
I don't want to put a deadline just
Yeah,
because there's
yeah.
these ATLs take some twists and turns because they go through review throughout OEHA. We have peer review at OEHA, and there's just a lot of things, unintended things that can happen that we're just unaware of until other
Yeah.
people look at it.
Fair
But
enough.
yeah.
I think you narrowed it down
Yeah.
well enough.
Yeah, no, it's getting close.
Yeah, firmly next year, plus or minus 10 to 12 months.
That's a good bracket.
Yeah. For those that added other, which is most folks that have responded, we heard Arrowhead Lake is of interest. Are there other water bodies that folks are interested in that they want to share here or add to the chat, or just, you know, something other than what's on this list? Okay, maybe Leg Lake. Great. Anyone else? All right. Well, like I said, this poll will remain active for 1 week, and I'll send it out in the update email with the recording and the slides. So tell your friends, tell your colleagues to complete the poll, and I'll pass the results over to Wes and team so that they have it to help with their prioritization process.
Thanks,
okay,
everyone.
Has Lori joined us yet? I don't think so.
I don't see her.
Okay. I'm gonna skip this and we'll come back. Just a quick update from me. We got some funding that went into place this year to work on a fish consumption application, and we're developing it with tribal consumers and subsistence consumers in mind. The timeline for this project, we've only got funding for 3 years. So we're trying to get a lot done in that time. And we are going to try and go for more funding so we can keep pushing this forward. But for now, the web page is up and it's linked on the slide. And we have a work plan kind of outlining our vision of what we hope to achieve with this project and with this application. The timeline has 3 different rows. The top represents engagement with our tribal advisory committee and anyone else. So for example, between March and June 2026, I'll probably give a demo here of the beta version of the application, and we'll solicit feedback from the STU and other places. The documentation is the documentation of describing the work and products and things like that. This application will have a GitHub repository and a user guide, an administrative guide, and a science guide to really help folks that want to use the application use it and understand how it works in ways that make sense to them. And then we're working with SFEI and OEHA, our official partners with this, and SFEI, the San Francisco Estuary Institute, their data team will be leading the programming development. So that's their timelines are there. Any questions about the Fish app? We're gonna make it so it's available on computers and then also on mobile devices, so folks can be out in the world right before fishing and checking out which fish are safe to eat in areas where they are according to their cultural practices.
Hey, Anna,
Okay.
is there going to be a way for the app to acquire data about what types of fish are being consumed? Is there like, is it a two-way kind of application, or is it really just for others to use it for, you know, health decision making?
Right now, the focus, again, we haven't met with our tribal advisory committee yet. So that type of decision will probably be informed by their recommendations. Right now on our work plan, the idea is to have it just be informational for the user. That sort of recommendation, we can capture that during a future feedback session and add it to our like wish list if and when we get more resources. But I suspect that folks that are using the app probably wouldn't want to share that information with us. So like just understanding data sovereignty of the users and things like that, that would have to be something that we talk through with the tribal advisory committee and others, but it's not off the table necessarily, and we can add it to our long list of wish list items that we have.
And it's going to be housed by the water board or by, okay.
Yes. So the application and documentation will be developed in partnership with SFEI, but the water boards will be hosting the application. It's going to be in our Shiny application. And so it'll be hosted on our GitHub, and we will receive training on how to maintain it over time after the funding runs out.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Jay, I see you unmuted. What you got?
I'm just ready for other updates.
Take it away.
Okay. A couple of things that I've been providing updates on along the way with our stew meetings. All positives possible, and the Garkina Strait Fish Project is coming to a conclusion. We had a session on it at the State of the Estuary conference yesterday. And it's, for those who don't know about it, it's a community-led project that's fairly intensive monitoring of community fishing sites in the Vallejo area. We did 4 sites within a small area in a pretty intensive effort, including community members collecting fish for analysis. And then we also had a contractor collecting. We compared the two modes of collection, and the data were very similar. But we got a fair amount of new data on PCBs, mercury, and PFAS. Which surprisingly, the concentrations in this area were surprisingly low relative to other parts of the bay. So a report on this is going to be, draft reports going to the RMP Fish Committee in November. And then the final reports will be ready in December. And then for the RMP, we monitor the bay thoroughly every 5 years. The last year was 2024, where the samples are being analyzed by the labs currently. So we'll also be sharing results of that work with our fish committee within the next few months. And then happy to share that information with this group as well. But we'll be generating a lot of new PFAS data for the Bay. A nice, complete, full data set. We're analyzing PFAS in all the samples this time. So sounds like the timing will be a little off to be able to use a new ATL to assess the data, because I think these data will probably have our report out by the middle of the year. But yeah, really looking forward to having the ATLs for PFAS so that we can use them in our future assessments of data from the Bay. And that's about it.
And you had your Bay RMP annual meeting a couple weeks ago. Is there going to be any like documentation or summary of the awesomeness that went down that we could share? Or
yeah, thanks for mentioning that. We had a similar session on the APP project at the RMP annual meeting. We had shorter time to work with, but there are presentations on that project that it's easy to Google the RMP annual meeting website, and you can get the slides and the recordings of the presentations. So if you're interested, that's a good resource.
Thanks, Jay. Any other updates from the group? Bioaccumulation related things, happenings? Okay, before we pass it off to our first speaker, Lori isn't in the Zoom room with us, but for those of you that have been a part of this group, you know that Nick Martirano was the director of the California Water Quality Monitoring Council for many years. He has since moved to a new position at the water boards, and Lori Weber is the new council director. She's fantastic. And getting her feet under her. She only started, I think, a couple months ago, August, July, something like that. But already she's, making great changes and moving things along for the council. One of the things that she has put together since beginning is developing a post-wildfire water quality work group. So this is a new work group right now. There's a lot of links on this page from, I think, the August council meeting, which had a wildfire, post-fire theme. So there's recordings and slides for those talks, but this topic is of interest to the council and many folks throughout California, understanding water quality before and after not just wildfires, but cultural burns and other things like that. So this work group is slowly beginning. So if this is something you're interested in, go to that webpage that's linked in the slides. That'll be available after the talk, and you can sign up for their email list and stay up to date. We also have, we had a summer fellow in OWEMA that helped us revamp the Safe to Swim map to make it a better science communication tool, so people can really understand not just where monitoring has been happening, but if it's safe to swim. There's no link here yet. It's going through some review process right now, but it will be made public pretty soon, I think. So heads up for that. And when it is available, it will be shouted from the rooftop. So don't worry, you'll know about it. And I'm sure an update will be provided at the next council meeting on November 20th. So just like these meetings, you do have to register for Zoom, but you can register, download the calendar invite, and then the agendas usually go out a week or two before the council meetings. Any questions about any of that? I may or may not be able to answer it, but I'll do my best. Okay, awesome. Last call for any other updates that people want to share? Great. All right, Emily, take it away.
Hey, thanks. Sorry, bear with me. I'm getting over a cold, so my voice is a little bit on the struggle bus. But hopefully, can you see my slide? Am I sharing the
Yeah.
right screen? Okay, awesome.
It looks good.
So, good morning. Today I'm going to present an overview of recreational and subsistence fishing in urban lakes in the LA region. This study was funded by Region 4 Swamp and discretionary funds and was conducted by scientists and staff at SCORP. So the authors of the report, excuse me, are Victoria McGruer, Darren Greenstein, Thomas Roca, Jeff Brown, and Dr. Alvina Mendoza out of SCORP, and Alvina's the principal scientist. So today I'll provide an overview of the study and survey locations, examples of the types of survey questions, and then move into results generally, and for subsistence fishing and non-consuming fishers, and then I'll finish up with some conclusions. The surveys were conducted by interview teams who typically visited the lakes twice per month, weekend and weekday, to alternate. Interview teams reported both their observations about the number of people fishing at the lake and engaged fishers in conversational interviews. Participating fishers or anglers were asked about their fishing, fish consumption habits, demographics, socioeconomic status, as well as if members of their household consumed fish that they caught. And then that interview data was used to estimate the fish consumption rates, determine if they were consuming fish at a subsistence level, and assess potential health risks. So the 4 lakes you can see on this map are Peck Road Park Lake, Leg Lake, Magic Johnson Lake, and Alondra Park Lake. And this was all conducted from January to September 2024. There was a total of 480 unique interviews. And the next few slides, I just have some pictures of what each lake looks like. They're urban. Magic Johnson Park Lake is this first image. It's probably the newest, actually. It's a pretty new park. Peck Road Park Lake. This is Leg Lake. So Leg Lake has a couple different water bodies in the park. Here's another from Leg. And then this one is Alondra Park Lake. So again, like very urban water bodies. And this table is clipped from the report. It provides characteristics of each lake, including we have advisories. You can see if the lake is stocked, so CDFW, fish planting, fish tissue TMDLs or chemicals of concern. So you can see some have PCB, DDTs, chlordanes, what watershed, and the rough acreage of each water body. And so this is, I think one thing to highlight is 2 of these lakes are not stocked, and these 2, I think it's Alondra and Magic, they both have signs of like, don't fish or consume the fish from these water bodies. So, kind of general types of questions. If you would like more details, you can always reach out to me. I'm going to work on getting the report posted on our website at some point, but so the survey crews were making observations, the number of people fishing, and then if those people were contacted and they agreed to participate in the survey, they were asked about their fishing and consumption habits, their demographics, like do they identify as Asian Pacific Islander, Hispanic, Latino, white, those sorts of census questions, socioeconomic status, general annual income. Do they feed members of their household any fish that they caught? And then that information again was used to estimate fish consumption and determine whether or not these anglers were consuming at a subsistence level. For this study, it was greater than or equal to 100 grams per day. And I have that on another slide as well. So some results, these are just like overall general survey information. We have the number of successful and declined interviews by lake. And the number of successful interviews at each lake is the gray bar. And then you can see that number just above the gray bar. So like Alondra Park Lake was 92 successful interviews out of 103 and so on. And the declined are the white. Excuse me, sorry. Then we have this bar graph that represents the percent of fishers who regularly consume fish from these surveyed lakes. And the number of consumers provided is like provided above the gray bar. So you can see it's a fairly low number of those interviewed are actually consuming fish. About 39 interviewees are identified as fish consumers, or around 8%. And then 33 of those 39 fish consumers were self-reporting, right? It's all just a questionnaire. Self-reporting consuming fish at rates below OEHA advisories for those water bodies. A small proportion of fishers and their households consume fish caught. But we can, dig a little deeper into some of this data as well. So in these graphs, you have we're breaking down the age and gender, if they identified as male or female, of the consumer. So generally it was men fishing, as you can tell from the graph on the top. Those are the fishers, blue male, gold, yellow, female, and then consumers. So then you see definitely more women being represented in the consuming category. But in addition to kind of those generic male, female fishing consuming, each lake, with the exception of Magic Johnson Lake, is also broken down into like the species of fish. You can see this is an example, a clip from Leg Lake, the different types of fish that you can find there, the min, max, median, mean of consumption based on self-reporting. And then the ages are binned under the age of 18, females ages 18 to 49, males over age 18, females over age 50. And so there were no fishers at Magic Johnson Lake reporting that they were consuming the fish. And there are many signs around that lake warning people there might be contamination in the water and advising people not to eat the fish. So, as Anna mentioned, this was partially due to our basin planning staff working on identifying water bodies for subsistence beneficial use designations, and part of our tribal beneficial uses effort. And so the study was designed to assess individuals fishing for personal consumption, which would then be considered subsistence, versus recreational fishing, which would, I think, have the COM beneficial use, or COMM. And again, for this study, subsistence fishers were defined as consuming greater than or equal to 100 grams of caught fish per day. And so 39 fishers ate from the lake surveyed, but only approximately 4 individuals met consumption limit for subsistence fishing. And of those 4 individuals, they were male, and the age range was 35 to 70, and they identified as Asian Pacific Islander, Hispanic, Latino, or multiracial. The mean consumption of these individuals was 616 grams per day. And the median consumption rate of these individuals was 438 grams per day, and they were consuming fish at least 3 times a week. And interestingly, 2 people ate fish from Leg Lake and 1 from Alondra Park. 1 ate at subsistence levels from both Leg Lake and Peck Road Park Lake. And the individual who consumed fish from both Leg Lake and Peck Road consumed very high levels of fish, totaling about 1,459 grams of fish per day, because they were, according to the interview, eating and catching fish multiple times per day. This specific interview was conducted in Mandarin Chinese, and the interviewee was recorded as being fairly reliable, quote, indicating that surveyors mostly trusted the individual's responses, but had some concerns about the reliability of their answers. And in general, the survey team is confident that fish caught from the 2 lakes are a significant part of this person's diet. So that was sort of like an outlier in the interviews. And a little bit more on the subsistence fishing. Several household members were also consuming fish at subsistence rates. So 3 household members of the 30 that were reported consumed fish from the surveyed lakes at subsistence levels. And these individuals were all from different households. 2 were women and 2 were female, 1 was male, and they were all around 70 years old. And the fishers who reported providing fish to household members were all interviewed in Mandarin Chinese and reported having a limited income in the category of $0 to $20,000 per year. And so these people were mainly consuming fish from Leg Lake and Peck Road Park. So moving into results for non-consumers. So these would be like the recreational fishing folks, non-fish consumers that answered. So not everybody answered this question, but of those that did answer why they weren't consuming the fish, this is the breakdown of their responses. So fishing for the species was just a hobby. That was the majority at 64%. A significant amount of people had water quality concerns, so about 24%. Another 24% said the species caught was not what they wanted to eat. Another 11% said they wanted to help maintain fish population in the lake. So, the whole catch and return. 9% said the fish was too small to consume. And then there was like 3% of other reasons. So kind of an interesting breakdown. And then one of the survey questions was, if the state addressed your water quality concerns, would you eat fish from this lake? Excuse me. Just a second. And so higher rates of respondents answered yes to this question at Peck Road Park Lake and Magic Johnson Lake compared to Leg and Alondra. This could be due to the posted warning signs at those lakes, which would make sense. Warning against consuming fish. There are also fewer fishers who currently consume fish at these lakes, and there were none that were saying they were eating at Magic Johnson. It could also be influenced by Leg Lake and Alondra Lake Park having lower rates of fishers citing water quality as the reason they're not consuming. So 17% of fishers were citing water quality as a concern at Alondra and Leg, but 25% were citing that as a concern at Magic Johnson and Peck Road Park. So multiple variables possible there, but still an interesting question. And a lot of people seem to be aware of water quality issues. And so to conclude, I'm sorry for all this text on this page, but basically from just, of course it's only 4 water bodies and only 480 people, but a small percentage of fishers were regularly consuming fish that they caught, around 8%. And fishers consume primarily from the 2 lakes that are seasonally stocked. So Leg Lake and Alondra Park Lake. Fishers seem to be avoiding consumption. Maybe the signs are working, where the fish are not stocked at Magic Johnson and Peck Road, where there's also warning signs. And most individuals were consuming caught fish at rates below advised limits set by OEHA. So 33 out of 39 consumers were not eating above limits. Very few individuals reported fish from the lake was a staple, right? And that's clear from how many people are indicating it consuming at subsistence levels. But household members are an important fraction of those consuming fish lakes. It is an important piece of the puzzle because we know that people bring food home to family members or people living in their home. So out of 30 household consumers, about 27 out of 30 were below the consumption advisories, which is positive, I guess. Surveyed lakes are frequently used for recreational fishing, and some consume at rates below subsistence levels, and limited individuals consume at like subsistence, so less than 1%. Another kind of thought was that maybe future studies would focus on those actively stocked lakes and increase the number of consumers interviewed at those types of water bodies. I think another important factor in Southern California is how important coastal fishing is, and that there are already like other types of work and surveys that are done on Palos Verdes Shelf and all along like Santa Monica Bay as well. And so I think you find probably, but I don't have the stats handy, more people like consuming regularly from ocean caught fish in our region. But there are a significant number of freshwater bodies that people could be fishing at. So sorry for my voice, but if anybody has any questions, I think we have plenty of time.
We have plenty of time for questions. Thank you so much, Emily, for pushing through with your voice. Feel free to hydrate as people start thinking of questions. And I'll just, yes, round of applause for Emily. I'm going to send a crazy reaction because why not? So if folks have questions, feel free to raise your hand, unmute before we dive in. I'll note that Emily will be sharing these slides with me, so you'll have access to them with the main slide deck. And then as soon as that report is posted, we'll also share a link to that in our notes page or through an email update or anything like that. All right, and hands are up. I think the first one I saw was Jay. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. It was a nice presentation. Sounds like a great study. And you reminded me of another update from Region 2, that Region 2 is also very interested in understanding the subsistence fishing activity in relation to potential beneficial use designation. And there's a small study that's underway. Last year, we had a project to develop a consumption survey, subsistence fishing consumption survey questionnaire that many of you are aware of. We developed that questionnaire last year, and now there's a small study that's using that questionnaire to gather information. The study's just getting started. Funding for SFEI work on this is coming from the Bay Area Clean Water Agencies, our local wastewater group, $50,000. And then Region 2 is also contributing a lot of staff time to do the surveys. So this is, we were able to identify these funds and do a small scale study to get things going. So I'm interested. I don't want to make you talk too much, but I'm interested in the report, whenever that's ready to share. And one question I have is a bigger picture question is, what was the overall budget for this study? And I'm looking forward to getting your slides and sharing them with the team that's working on this stuff in our region.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing just so I can look up a number while we're talking. I want to say, it was pretty expensive, if I'm honest, 200,000 to 300,000 range, I think, because I used maybe half of the budget was swamp back when we had swamp funds, and then regional swamp funds, and then I think another chunk was discretionary basin planning money, since it was supporting basin planning efforts. But that was the ballpark.
Right.
Yeah, so it was pretty expensive because of people's the time intensity going out and surveying, and then they had, variety of people that spoke different languages. Of course, Spanish and Mandarin are probably the most common in our region. Probably in the Bay Area too, although maybe there's more other Asian languages you need to consider that I don't know how many. I'd have to go back and look to see if there's a breakdown of like that. census data of the different languages of the interviewees. I don't remember off the top of my head.
And then, what are your next steps on this?
I would need to check in with basin planning and their
Yeah.
triennial review. And because I'm supporting it, or I supported basin planning, but I'm not. We have 2 basin planning staff, so I would need to check in with them and see what their status is. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Yeah, Wes. I think you were
Hopefully I'm
next.
not cutting anyone.
No, you're
No, I
good.
think you're
You're good.
next.
And hopefully this will be quick. You answered most of it, but did you get any sort of anecdotal comments about coastal fishing? Just trying to look at the representative sources of food for people.
Yeah, like if they were also fishing other water bodies. I don't know. I would have to go back and look in the appendices to see if that was even part of, or if it was volunteered, that information, because I do know we have surveys from coastal, also like part of the EPA, like Superfund, PIVSTIG, I think it's called, or
Yeah, the FCEC.
yeah, that one. There's the PIVSTIG and the FCEC, yeah.
Yeah.
Which you probably already know about. So, but no, I don't have that information off the top of my head.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation.
Heather?
Hey, Emily, thanks for the presentation. Hey, just a quick question. I might have missed it in the beginning. So this was to support the basin planning effort. Are those water bodies already listed in your basin planning? You're trying to determine whether or not to assign that beneficial use to those, or?
Yeah, trying to get an idea of, because we don't have any subsistence lakes identified. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, right? And it's hard to gauge something like that designation. So it was an effort to support subsistence beneficial use.
Okay, so they're not in your basin plan already, the water
Not
bodies?
designated. No, I think most are just designated calm, like rec fishing.
Oh, okay, but so those are kind of like more regional lakes, but they are still in your basin plan. Oh, interesting.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. Katie?
Hey, sorry. So hi everyone, Katie Siri, Ocean Protection Council. So really new to this space, but my question was maybe a little bit of a follow-on to Wes's question. I was just wondering if you or others in this group could point me towards similar studies that have been done for coastal or marine, especially in that region. But I'd be really interested to see. So feel free to send them to me. I would love to read them.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we did a compilation of consumption survey studies 2-3 years ago. So this one isn't on there yet. But it was statewide, and I'll look that up and see if I can share the link in the chat and also add it to the notes.
Thank you so much,
So
Anna.
yeah, no worries. It doesn't include the study that Emily just talked about because the report's still forthcoming, nor does it include the study that Jay referenced in the San Francisco Bay region. And full disclosure, we tried to get the lead of that study to present today as well, but they were triple booked. So, but I'm feeling good about April. So we will get an update in this space about that study as well. So I will dig for that.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks, Emily, for the presentation. Hope you feel better.
Thanks.
Lori?
Hey, Emily. And hey, everybody. Great presentation. Sorry. I was looking at something really quick. I'm Lori Weber. I'm the new Monitoring Council Director, so I just want to say glad to be back. But I did have a question, and I think it's along the lines of the questions that Wes was asking and Katie. It's really exciting to see consumption surveys, especially getting at the question of subsistence fishers, which I see all the time and wonder, like, are they putting themselves at risk? Is there, I'm just kind of curious if you're preparing one of these surveys, like, is there a one-stop shop or a place to go to, or, you know, the gold standard for how to do a fish survey, a consumption fish survey? And it sounds like maybe not. And I guess my next question is what kind of Anna had just talked about is you guys have compiled a list of existing consumption surveys in California, which is great, or maybe outside of California. But I'm just sort of thinking, like, what can, you know, is there anything the council can do? Is there anything that we can do, you know, to support these types of studies and make it easier for people when they're, you know, they've got their funding or they have their interest in doing a study, like where can they go for some resources that will help them? So just kind of throwing it out there.
I have thoughts on this, Emily, if you don't mind me jumping in, and then feel free to add. But I thought you wouldn't mind because your voice. Great. Yeah.
I was trying to ask
So
a question of many people to avoid.
to my knowledge, there isn't a one-stop shop or best practices guidance for delivering consumption surveys, particularly for tribal and subsistence communities. Many of the historic subsistence survey or consumption surveys that have taken place, for the ones coming to mind, I think San Diego region did one. I think LA region did one many years ago. And there are others focused on recreational consumption and understanding that demographic of folks that consume fish. There was a tribally centered survey that was done many years ago. It's known as the Shilling paper, and that's in the reference as well. And, you know, trying to figure out and put together a statewide guidance on how to do a survey. That's been something that's on our wish list for the Safety Work Group and the Swamp Bioaccumulation Monitoring Program for many years. And we're just waiting for funding. So I've submitted funding proposals for internal opportunities many, many times, and none of them have been accepted yet, unfortunately. But we're going to keep going and utilizing this space to hear from experts like Emily and others that are doing this type of work, and leveraging what they're learning. So like Emily is learning things, Emily and team are learning things about like types of questions that are effective and those that aren't. The San Francisco Bay region is learning similar things. So can I let you know a little secret? My big dream is to kind of put together a work group or something, use this space to kind of review what has been done, create a standard statewide survey, and then find community-based organization and tribal partners that would actually deliver the surveys in partnership with us. And hopefully we can give them funding to do so, and then have consistent survey responses throughout the state for freshwater and marine surveys. And then Jay, I see you have your hand raised if you want to add anything to that.
Sure. Yet I also am not aware of a gold standard, but I think the process we went through to develop the questionnaire for San Francisco Bay was a good one. And had some of the important ingredients. One being we had community members advising the process of developing the questionnaire. We also had technical experts providing, you know, advice and sort of basically built-in peer review along the way. So I think those are good elements for working toward a gold standard. The goal, there's always a trade-off. You don't want to make the questionnaire too long, so you need to be very selective and strategic about what questions you include, and the information needs are going to vary from region to region. You know, they might vary somewhat. So I think there's probably could be a statewide sort of template, but maybe with, you know, allowing for some minor variation for regions to get information that are top priorities for them. So I think that there's we have a report on that questionnaire development process. I think that's a good resource.
Yeah, and I can link to that as well. I think
I'll pop that one in the chat.
You the
I
best.
just wanted to
Thanks.
share
Awesome.
that I don't know if you can see this is like a table. I mean, I don't think this is necessarily comprehensive of all of the available data, but this was something that they put together as a reference. And you can see some of these studies are pretty old. So that's why I don't think there's been as much, like Anna was saying, not as much focus on subsistence fishing. I think the most recent in this table is San Diego Bay, their study. Anyway, just in case you were curious.
Thanks for sharing that, Emily. And I think we have, I can't find the link that I was looking for, Katie, but I'll be sure to add it to the notes. That has links to all of those citations that Emily just shared on her screen. So hang tight for that. Okay. Thanks, Emily, again. Oh my gosh, I love that.
I didn't mean to do all
So
this.
good.
Things.
You know what? Don't apologize for
Yeah.
art. That was delightful.
Sorry.
I'm gonna share my screen really quickly, and then I'll pass it off to you, Angie. The most important part of this is so I can know where to pause in the recording and create chapters, but I'll pass it over to you in a second. Awesome. So our next speaker is Angie Norda, and we've heard from she's a frequent guest of this too. She's been giving us presentations for the past couple of years about Assembly Bill 762, which provides funding for local health officers and water body managers to post OEHA fish consumption advisory signs at water bodies. And Angie's going to give us an update on what's been happening, the status of the funding, and all sorts of good stuff. So with that, Angie, take it away. Go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, here we go. Can you see that?
Yes, it's popping up.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me again. So I think it's been over a year since I've done the update. For those of you who weren't here before, my name's Angie Norda. Like Anna said, I work for the Division of Financial Assistance for the Stormwater Unit. So I manage mostly stormwater grants, and then I also manage this grant program, the Fish and Shellfish Consumption Advisories Program. I've been working with doing a lot of the co-pilot trainings. I sat in for some of the co-pilot training, so this is a little image from the co-pilot chat that I said, have some people fishing with a health advisory sign. So it ties in with the last presentation you had here, but so this is all about the grants to put these signage up for health consumption. Here we go. So I'll go over, the general, you probably already know what the fish advisories are, most of you, but I'll go over that. And again, like Anna said, the grant program was developed by AB 762. So we'll go through some of the details of that, and I can give you what's been completed so far and the upcoming funding, and we can go over questions at the end if you have any. The purpose of the grant is to help local agencies in California post the health warnings for fish consumption. And the main tasks of the grant were to prepare outreach to all the local agencies and then develop, at least for the first round, they developed the application. So they send out the application to all the agencies and then send out award letters, and then also reviewing reimbursement requests and the post-construction documentation, like signage of the posted signs. So a review for anybody, the fish consumption advisories, just advisories for short. They indicate how often you can safely eat fish and shellfish caught from California water bodies. Here's the site where you can find them. OWIHA posts those and develops the fish advisories. And here's a sample sign. So for the grant, the way AB 762 is worded, we could only have site-specific advisory signage be reimbursed under the grant, so we couldn't reimburse statewide advisories. So I wanted to point that out. I think there's about 150 site-specific advisories currently. There seem to be developed quite often. So on the right here, I just put a screenshot of the OWIHA website. And so at the top, there's a section for the statewide advisories that say without site-specific advice. So unfortunately, we can't fund the advisories listed there, but we can fund the site-specific ones, which are mostly, I think, in that second section where you can search by water body. So going back a little bit to the legislation, Assembly Bill 762 required postings for site-specific advisories. And before AB 762, they were only urged to post the signs. So AB 762 also required the state board to award grants to either nonprofit or local agencies. AB 762 also called out for the state water board to submit an update to the legislature on the grant program. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. And Senate Bill 74 allocated an initial $380,000 for the program, plus the $50,000 annual amount that can be added as needed. The grant agreement was executed in 2021 between the state board and CCDEH, which is the California Conference of Directors of Environmental Health. So that first agreement, which is the current agreement, has had 2 funding rounds. And that agreement's going to end early next year. We're actually developing a second grant agreement. It's going to be a 3-year agreement that's going to be, hopefully next spring, we'll get that executed. And the idea is to have an annual funding rounds. So they'll have the same due dates every year where they send out the application, send out the awards, and then the local agencies have about AB 762 calls for them to have 6 months to post the signs. So hopefully they can get everything in a year for that second agreement. Or just to clarify, it'll be like a rolling 3-year agreement, right? So it'll probably be extended after the 3 years also, but having these annual funding rounds. And then an update on funding round 1 that was completed. $213,000 approximately was reimbursed to 22 local agencies, and approximately 665 signs were installed at 68 water bodies. Funding round 2 awards were sent out about a year ago. $83,000 was awarded to 9 agencies. Agencies have completed their installations. We received a draft reimbursement request. However, the final one, which we can actually review, should be submitted soon. And a little bit about the program update report. I mentioned before that the state water board was required to submit a report to the legislature, which we did back in 2023. It was before round one. We had the numbers for round one. So these 4 bullet points at the bottom is the information that was required to be reported on, was the main meat of the report. And we didn't have a whole lot of information. So we're going to have CCDH do updates on that. So here's the information. They just wanted to know where health advisories were posted and also the agencies that posted. And that's not just under the grant project, that was also outside the grant. And then the summary of water bodies required to post, but not yet posted. And then a cost estimate for full funding, for the whole grant program. So one of the amendments to the grant agreement added a deliverable for CCDH. They've submitted their draft program update report, is what we're calling it. And that's close to being approved. We sent it over to AWIHA, so the folks from AWIHA, thanks for reviewing that. CCDH also reached out to local agencies to get a lot of that information. There were, they set it up. They have a kind of a data sheet. They have all the required advisories listed separately, and then they have who posted under the grant and where. And then there was one agency that posted outside with their own funding. They have those locations listed, and then they have the locations that still need to be posted listed, as well as the cost. They estimated about $900,000 for that, includes CCDH costs and agency costs, to get, the full requirements of AB 62 completed. And I think it was good because they ended up reaching out to the local agencies. So it became somewhat of an outreach to the local agencies, kind of a heads up, like we have more funding for these signs. And so hopefully we'll get some more applications in for funding round 3 for the next funding round. So that was kind of the overview. Just to recap and next steps. AB 762 required those site-specific health advisories to be posted. And the Fish Advisories Grant Program helps to fund these required postings. Round 1 was completed and reimbursed to the local agencies. Round 2, installations were completed, and that reimbursement request should be coming to us soon. The end of the first grant agreement should be, the end of the first grant agreement will be early next year, and we're preparing a new agreement, which should take over, and they should be able to submit applications for round 3, hopefully by mid-2026. And that's it. I'll open it up for any questions that anyone has.
That was great. Thanks, Angie. I'm glad to hear that there's going to be another a grant round, and that we can kind of share announcements when things open in mid-2026. Any questions for Angie from the group? You had a great statistic for the round 1, like the number of signs posted, 600 and something like that. Do you have that number for round 2 yet?
I don't have the statistic. I have the Excel sheet with all of them listed, but I tried to, I'm gonna have to go back and have the statistic.
Yeah, no worries.
Plus it's not 100% finalized. I mean, it's pretty much there, but I can give you the statistic once I have it and send it over.
Yeah, no, I was curious.
Yeah,
And
I
impressed
have
with
the
round one.
listing of how many water bodies haven't been posted, which is they're showing 97 water bodies with no postings yet, and 12 water bodies with only partial postings. And then there's some replacement signs, 75 replacement signs they're expecting to post.
Yeah,
So
it's good that we're capturing that information.
and I
Cool.
think the first funding round, I think 31. Well, some of the applications from round one and round two overlapped. So
Sure.
with the agencies applied both times. So, but there's a number of at least probably 20 agencies that haven't submitted applications yet.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
good to know.
mhm.
Wes?
Hi, Angie. Thanks for the presentation. Good to see you. Are you planning on developing a metric for the amount of signs that are damaged or slated for replacement? And it just strikes me as it would be interesting to know how many are slated for replacement and why.
Right. That's right, because they are mentioning 75 signs that will need to be replaced, but I don't know if it's a replacement of funds we've already, like signage we've already given them, or if those were signs were existing before the grant program, or are we replacing a sign that was posted previously by their own funding?
Yeah.
And
Just
also,
curious.
yeah, how they were damaged. I know there's a lot of graffiti and like people, putting stickers or I don't know, marker or what have you on those signs. But I don't know, maybe weather, I'm not sure. But it's a good question if we could maybe have them put that into their next report. That would be good. Yeah.
That'd be super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
We have a note from the chat that I'm just going to read aloud so we can all hear it. As a local agency, we didn't have clear direction during phase 1 and 2 regarding where to post signs. They had no idea that we had 4 additional sites that needed signs, so they're looking forward to phase 3. And they noted they weren't allowed to claim funds for signs unless they were posted. So damaged signs stay damaged until approved for replacement. Good. Thanks for sharing that. It's good context. Jay, and then we'll move to break.
I can talk shortly on that.
Yeah, sure.
So for the grant program, since we look to AB 762, the bill, we it's somewhat unlike our we have stormwater guidelines and we can interpret those ourselves, but we have to look to our legal staff. And so for interpretation of the bill, and so the signs needed to be completed and essentially installed before we could reimburse the amounts. So that's I think that's where the question is coming from. So unfortunately, yeah, we can't fund kind of a stockpiling of signs for them to, they can't get reimbursed until they have the installations complete. So
yeah, and just thinking about like future years as we get more, the PFAS data comes in and OEHA starts updating advisories, like a lot of signs are going to be out of date in the coming years. So stockpiling signs may not be the best thing to do right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jay, and then we'll head to break.
Yeah, this is a short one. I won't keep this from break for too long. I think maps of where signs have gone in or where they're needed of all this information would be handy. And like, I could look at a map of Region 2 and see I'm curious as to how much has been done in our region and where there might be needs for more. Have you thought about, maybe you've mapped things, or have you thought about mapping the information?
I hadn't thought of that. We do have the lat long for the locations now in their Excel sheet for their program update report. I don't know if that's something that we would require, you know, CCDH to do, or if that's something someone from the water board would want to take on. I don't think we have the staffing in our division to do that, but is that something, do you have a map of, is there a map of the OWIHA water bodies, and is there already a map of existing locations?
Yeah, so I can actually chime in here, and I'd love to connect with you after to get that list of lat longs, because I think our office could potentially help mapping where advisory signs are posted and thinking about like integrating that information to the fish consumption app that we talked about before. So OWIHA has a map of water bodies that have advisories, but it's not necessarily that there's postings there, but advisories exist. So I think like looking at the data that you have, the data that advisory that OWIHA has would be really good. And OWIMA gets fellows pretty frequently. So this could be a project that we give to one of our fellows to do. So Angie, let's you and I chat offline and figure out how we can share data and yeah, do what Jay suggested, because I love that you have lat longs and I didn't realize that. So
yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. I don't think CCDH may not have the technical capability to do the mapping anyway. So if that could be done through your group, that's great. Yeah.
Another thought, it would be a great way to summarize things for management. I think, you've done so many already. It's going to be impressive.
Yeah.
Right. Once people can see it on a map, then it becomes more concrete. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much, Angie. That was really great. And we went through a lot there. I am going to share my screen. We went a little bit over time. I think it's worth it. Originally, we planned to break at 11, but that's like 6 minutes, which is super lame. So would a 10-minute break be good? Or are people okay with 6 minutes coming back at 11? How are folks feeling? It's really hard to read body language of Zoom boxes.
10 minutes sounds good.
Okay, 10 minutes. Okay, I'll update the slide. Come back at 11:05. We'll see you then. Welcome back from the break. Thank you so much for being prompt. I hope it was a good one. You're stuck with me for the next hour. I'm gonna go through I'm gonna give a presentation about the San Diego Region Realignment Data Report. I'll give a quick summary on the project and the data, and then we'll start to wrap things up for the stew today. So here we go. For those that haven't been around the stew, or it's been a while since we've talked about the realignment, we started this back in 2020 to really think about, for the swamp statewide bioaccumulation monitoring program, how we can do better at incorporating and partnering with tribes and communities to inform what we do for our program. So we really wanted to build stronger relationships with tribes and communities, really do better at coordinating amongst ourselves, amongst the water boards, regions, divisions, and offices. And as we were talking about in the presentations earlier today, a lot of the fish consumption information has been targeted or centered recreational consumption. The same kind of gap has existed with the data. So we really wanted to understand what tribal and community members and folks that are interested in bioaccumulation, like where are the places, species, and pollutants that are of the most interest to them, and how can we monitor to reflect those needs? And this was really us trying to do our part and think about how we can operationalize equity, inclusion, and belonging in our programs, and address and correct, social and environmental injustice that exists in our programs just because of the systems that we live and work within. It's really thinking about how can we operationalize equity and justice. The realignment process is a 3-year cycle, and in the San Diego region, we started in 2021. The first year is meant to, bring the advisory committee or, folks that are work group members together and identify, really kind of brainstorm of where are the data and information gaps that exist according to tribes and communities, and use that information to develop a monitoring plan. Year 2, we worked with our contractors to do that monitoring according to the priorities specified in the monitoring plan. And while that monitoring was happening, we continued conversations with in this case, the regional advisory committee members to think about communication needs. So we can collect all the data in the world, but if it's not being communicated well, then it can be arguably meaningless. So really thinking about how can we as a program do better to communicate with tribes and communities and really open and strengthen those communication pathways. And then the last year was meant to identify next steps and start to think about, as the data was coming in, what are we learning from the data that we collected. In the San Diego realignment, we did all of those things. We had 77 advisory committee meetings between 2021 and 2023. There are links to all of the data products or the documentation products. So we've got that monitoring analysis work plan. The cruise report is what's linked to the conducted monitoring link. We have the communication and outreach plan that we developed at the end of year 2. And there were lots of other recommendations that came up in conversation that were kind of outside of the scope of those 2 topics, but we wanted to capture. And so those are in the summary of long-term recommendations. And today, I'm going to talk about the data report that we developed that summarized the 2022 monitoring results. And all of these links are available on the link at the bottom of the slide. Before we go into results, I just wanted to give a shout out to the San Diego Region Advisory Committee. So we had representation from a couple of tribal governments, some tribal organizations like the California Indian Environmental Alliance, the Native American Environmental Protection Coalition, as well as community-based organization representative from Citizens for Coastal Conservancy, Just Transition Alliance, Orange County Coastkeeper, and San Diego Coastkeeper. And because of the nature of the conversations, we included invited guests to listen and learn together as we heard from our advisory committee members, but then also to answer questions and share our own expertise from the agency perspective. So we invited folks from Fish and Wildlife, Public Health, the California Water Quality Monitoring Council. Moss Landing was really a huge partner, and SFEI a huge partner for particularly developing the monitoring plan. Those are contractors that we use to implement the monitoring. OEHA, of course, and the U.S. Forest Service participated every once in a while. So through through the conversations, we were able to identify 22 water bodies of importance. And to be really explicit here, tribes and communities identified those as being important. So I'm sure Fish and Wildlife and the water boards and OWIHA have ideas of what water bodies we want information on. That was not the priority here. The priority was to center tribes and communities. Based on the funding that we had available, we had to prioritize those water bodies. We could only afford to sample at 10. And the cruise report summarizes, which water bodies were sampled and what was collected and the methods used and things like that. The advisory committee also directed our analysis. So we kind of did an overview of the type of species we generally collected in the San Diego region as a statewide program and what analysis analytes were in our usual suite. And you can see at these tables here, we have a list of high priority things and a list of things that would love to be sampled if we had more resources. So for 2022, the high priority items were different bass species, perch, topsmelt, mackerel, as well as adding shellfish, mussels, oyster, and lobster. And the San Diego region actually contributed their own additional resources to monitor those, to collect those samples and run the analysis. High priority analytes were basically mercury, selenium, PCBs, OC pesticides, getting a better understanding of cyanotoxins, algal toxins. And this was the first time I think the program really focused on PFAS monitoring. You'll notice at the bottom of the slide, whole body is highlighted. So our standard sample and analysis procedures for the statewide monitoring include analyzing skin off fillets because that's what OWIHA uses for their advisories. Makes sense. The advisory committee really wanted to understand whole body analysis because not all subsistence and tribal consumers consume skin off fillets. So they wanted to understand how their risk might change if they're consuming the whole fish or more than just the skin off fillet. So for the majority of our results, they're actually whole body results, not skin off fillet results. So these are the coastal locations that we were able to sample. And this is just an example of what the species that we were able to catch and analyze and the mercury results that we got. We'll go into the recommendations for what that means for how many meals per week, according to OWIHA and other recommendations.
And Anna, what are the dots and lines?
So the blue dots are the data results from the analysis. So the amount of mercury that was found in the walleye surf perch samples, for example, at the Zoom has blocked the site location. So I'm going to go down to this one. Okay, so the spot fin croaker mercury results for Oceanside Harbor. So each box is a different location. The blue is the mercury results, and the yellow, orange, and red lines indicate how many meals per week. So if you're to the left of the yellow dotted line at the far left, you can eat 3 or more meals per week. If you're between the yellow and orange dash line, that's like the 2 meals per week range. If you're between the orange and red, that's the 1 meal per week range. And if you're to the right of the red line, that's the 0 meals per week. Do not eat that fish.
I think it's good that you explain those, but I think the line, so that each dot is a sample, looks like.
Yeah.
And then
And it might be a composite.
and the blue lines are just kind of showing you more clearly where the dots are.
I think it's the range or
It
the
goes from
deviation.
goes
Because
from
there might be multiple.
they always go to 0 though. So
Oh, great point. You'd think I know I made this graph. Yeah, so it shows you, I guess, the distance.
yeah,
from 0.
it just makes it easier to see the dots, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks, Jay.
Okay. Thank you.
And the bottom, the x-axis, the horizontal axis shows the concentration of mercury in parts per billion in wet weight. Same sort of graphic for the reservoir or river locations. We were only able to sample 4 places here. Fewer species were collected because that's just the nature of fishing and not catching, right? And we'll go into what all of this means by site collectively in a second. So the way we interpreted the data for mercury, selenium, PCBs, and OC pesticides, we considered the level of pollutants in the sample and OEHA's thresholds that are associated with their advisory tissue thresholds, or ATLs. We were talking about those for PFAS before, or fish contaminant goals. And based on the ATL or fish contaminant goals of grams per day, that can be associated with a number of meals per week, depending on how much you consume. So if you're eating 8-ounce servings, then for 74, the 74 grams per day threshold, that would be 2 meals per week. But if you're consuming larger servings, then you have fewer servings per week. And these thresholds were selected based on consumption study references. So we mentioned San Diego Bay had done consumption studies, I think in 2017 and maybe earlier. So for the 74 grams per day threshold kind of aligned well with the recreation consumption of San Diego Bay anglers. The 142 grams per day aligned with the 95th percentile of that tribal consumption survey that we mentioned before. I think it's Schilling 2016, something like that, 2018. And then the 240 grams per day aligned well with the 99th percentile of tribal consumption, as well as the 99th percentile of San Diego Bay consumers. And this will all make more sense in a second, so bear with me. And then for more details about our interpretation of these and kind of more detailed breakdowns, the data report goes into that. So when we interpreted PFAS data, as we've talked about many times before, we don't have OEHA thresholds, ATLs yet. They're in process, but we still wanted to be able to interpret the relative safety of consumption of our PFAS results. So we look to Massachusetts and Washington State for the thresholds that they use. And for Massachusetts, below 0.22 parts per billion would be protective of unlimited consumption for the general population. So when we talk about the general population, we're talking about, I think, OEHA, help me out here, women or people that can have children over the age of 50 and men. And then the sensitive population is not those things and children.
Yeah, I don't know I don't remember how Washington or Massachusetts defines their sensitive population. It could be the same, might be different. Yeah, mercury and PFAS might have different sensitive populations. I mean, it's sort of contaminant driven, but yeah, that's the basic idea is children are more susceptible.
Yeah. And then Washington State, their thresholds are a little bit different, but below 4.7 parts per billion would be protective of 1 meal per week. And for them, 1 meal is 227 grams, and above 28 for PFAS recommends do not eat as the protection. So each site is going to have a table with this heading, and I just wanted to like orient us as we walk through these. So these are the different OEHA thresholds. So above that, 74 grams per day, 142 grams per day, 240 grams per day, and the fish consumption guidance. And then the PFAS thresholds for these two are Washington State, and then the do not eat, is that right? Washington State, Massachusetts, and then the do not eat for Washington State. And we'll have the species listed by row, and red cells indicate you shouldn't eat more than that amount to be protective according to those thresholds. And no, if it's not highlighted red, then it's safe to eat that amount of fish. So if we look at Dana Point as an example, we can see for chub mackerel, for example, and we're looking at the results for all of the contaminants. So the first couple of columns reflect the most protective amount for mercury, selenium, PCBs, and we might have done others. So basically, the red cells mean we shouldn't be eating that amount of that fish. So chub mackerel, maybe don't eat that at Dana Point. Jack smelt, you could probably eat up to 74 grams per day and be protective of the mercury, selenium, PCBs. And then you'll notice that the PFAS level is 1 meal per day at 227 grams per day. You shouldn't eat more than 227 grams per day, but you're probably good at 74 grams. It's a lot to like dig through for these tables. And I'm not going to go through each one, but the take home message here is on the right side of each slide. So for Dana Point, the safest fish to eat were Pacific bonito and Pacific oyster. And PCBs, mercury, and PFAS really drove the threshold levels. So those contaminants that we found in all of the fish tissue or the whole body samples really determined the threshold exceedances. Any questions on like the interpretation of the table before I go on? Because we're going to go through 9 more sites that look the same. So I want to make sure my explanation is landing for folks. All right, thanks for the thumbs up. So for Oceanside Harbor, same thing, lots of red, not so great, but we do have some relatively safe consumption at, lower amount, 74 grams per day. The safest heat was again Pacific bonito and Pacific oyster, up to 142 grams per day potentially. So higher servings per week if we're thinking about things in that sense. Oceanside Pier, also at the top, there's the map of all the sample locations and then a screen grab of like the specific site. It's easier to look when you can see the slides on your own, but you can see like where the actual samples were collected. And the cruise report has larger versions of these images in particular, and it talks about the different methods that were used to collect the samples. Yeah, Jay?
Just a detailed question for the PFAS. The first column says 1 meal per day, 227 grams per day. Is that per day?
That's a typo.
Yeah. Okay.
Look at you catching my typos as per usual. Yeah, no, thanks for pointing that out. And
Sure.
I can, per week. Yeah, it's meant to be per week. And can I correct those? No, but I'll make a note on the slides. Okay, Oceanside Pier, the safest to eat were California mussels, yellowfin, croaker, but it's important here that we didn't get a ton of samples of yellowfin croaker. So this is like, we would feel more comfortable with more data before we do a firm recommendation that it is the safest fish to eat. And that's the case, I think, for a lot of this. We were able to collect a good amount of data as like a pilot to get baseline understanding of what's happening in the region, but we really need more data to increase our certainty. Mission Bay, the safest animal to eat here is Pacific oyster, but the spiny lobster and other fish are relatively safe to eat at small amounts. San Diego Bay was the most contaminated site sampled. Oh yeah, Sam? Yep. Did you want me to go back to Mission Bay?
Oh no, you're good. I apologize. I'm the health officer for San Diego County. I really appreciate that you all have done this and thank you for communicating this and it's clearly a wonderful job. I just had a couple questions because I am sorry. I have to leave. Joanna's still here from environmental health, but just in terms of understand this is a pilot and I understand, funding is limited and so not sure about the future and what will happen, but it just from our perspective, do you know how is this being communicated more broadly, or how should we at the local level be communicating this more broadly, and also keeping in mind, that we want to be consistent. And sorry, you're over here, even though my camera's over here, but
No worries.
keeping in mind that we want to be consistent with messaging up and down the state, right? And so we're not interpreting the results differently in different areas. And so just want to know if like there's any like comms plan or anything like that, or anything or that we should work collaboratively to develop that across the state.
Yeah, we should definitely work collaboratively and I think we've kind of already started these conversations with OEHA in the loop as well. And if you don't mind, I might actually put a pin in that question because I want to talk about that at the end.
Okay.
Because the funding situation has changed things for our ability to do all of that. Do you mind hanging tight if we could do that?
I need to leave, but Joanna's here, so she will brief us. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And it'll be recorded, so you can watch it later.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for joining. Take care. Okay, so Mission Bay, safest to eat was Pacific oyster. San Diego Bay was the most contaminated site. And you can notice that a lot of the fish were not safe to eat, but the shellfish were safer to eat. But it's important to note that we weren't tracking like fecal indicator bacteria levels. And so if there are closures for shellfish in these areas, that would take precedence over our current understanding of whole body, because we didn't capture that in these analyses. Same sort of note for Imperial Beach, right? Marine biotoxins, exactly. So bacterial and viral contamination of shellfish weren't measured for any of the sites, not just these ones, but for these sites in particular, Imperial Beach, the safest to eat was the California mussel, but there's like a regular closure there for bacterial and viral contamination. So really thinking about these data holistically with other data exists are really important. We're not publishing this report to replace current OEHA fish consumption advisories or other consumption advice that's posted at locations, particularly when bacterial or viral contamination is present. This is just getting us a really good baseline understanding of what's happening in these locations. Okay, moving to the freshwater sites. So the types of species are different, but the table structure is the same. At Lake Cuyamaca, The testing was limited to mercury and selenium for the majority of species, but we did test largemouth bass for everything else. So PFAS, PCBs, OC pesticides, and PBDs. And you can see for this, when we're just looking at mercury and selenium, things look relatively safe to eat for a lot of species, but thinking about the other pollutants collectively, largemouth bass was not safe to eat. So we definitely need more sampling at this site to get a better understanding of what is safe to eat, if anything. And that kind of recommendation, I think, can be extended to other locations. So for the San Diego River, again, testing was limited. The safest fish or shellfish to eat was brown bullhead, but like we're putting safest in quotes here. It's like the least bad option, and we would need more data, and most species exceeded the PFAS do not eat threshold. So really thinking about how much we're eating at this location and being really cautious, I think is important. We wouldn't call brown bullhead particularly safe to eat, but it's safest given the other information we have. Troyes Reservoir, again, more sampling is needed here. Largemouth bass really came in hot with high amounts of contamination. So we need more data to get a better understanding and of the certainty around this information. Lower Sweetwater River, I think it's more like a pond, but that's neither here nor there. PFAS and mercury drove the threshold exceedances here. So it'll be really important for us to look at these data again when we have the California ATLs to really understand the safety considering PFAS. And it's important to note here that for bluegill in particular, the PFAS results exceeded the do not eat threshold by a factor of 7. So it's not like there was just a little bit of PFAS and exceeded the threshold. PFAS was really, really high in this location for that species. Okay, so our recommendations and next steps. In past safety workgroup meetings, we've talked about changes in our budget. To be more explicit in terms of next steps for monitoring, our budget has been cut for the program. We no longer have the funds to monitor. So the realignment process was impacted by this. We started the process in the San Francisco Bay region and had to stop it because we ran out of funding. So our first, in 2023, we still had funding. And so we were planning on revisiting sites. And when I say we, I want to say the San Diego region explicitly, because they really went above and beyond in our partnership with this. And they were taking action to revisit sites and do more analyses and things like that. But their budget was also impacted. So that's not happening. So our first recommendation is let's bring the funding back so we can get back to work. We want to resample the species that we were only able to test for like mercury and selenium and not PFAS. So really thinking about understanding the PFAS levels for those species. Good news, we mentioned the PFAS archive project in the data update during the quick updates portion. And we're able to sneak our funding through to run some PFAS analysis on archived samples. So the San Diego region, again, really was able to get funding to run, I think it's like over 100 samples, archive samples for PFAS analysis. And we're excited to get the data back from the lab and make that data available in CEDN. We're hoping the middle of 2026, mid to late 2026, but we'll keep keep everyone updated on where the status of all of that is. So we're still moving forward with getting data. It's silver lining, I guess. Another thing, as we've mentioned, OEHA is working on developing ATLs and fish contaminant goals for PFAS, or PFASs, I guess is the more correct term. And if and when we can kind of bring back statewide monitoring, adding PFAS to our regular suite of monitoring and analysis, we historically have been focusing on mercury, selenium, and PCBs because those are the key drivers for health risk, and also align well with TMDL development, which is another water board's process that our regional board folks here can speak to. And yeah, so adding PFAS or PFOS to regular statewide sampling is something that we kind of have in our minds. We're trying to get funding back, and I'm going to be optimistic. If and when that does happen, we'll add it to our monitoring plans and consider that in our budgets. And that's all I have for you. I think to get to that question about communication plans, we haven't, because these data are pilot, and because they're on whole body analysis, we haven't really don't necessarily recommend using this as like consumption guidance at this time, right? So really continuing to lean on the OEHA fish consumption advisories that are at water bodies as the formal official guidance to consume fish safely. That continues to be our recommendation. But as we're monitoring and learning more and more data comes in, considering this as informational, I think is our recommendation. So because of that, we haven't developed a communication plan to share this information more broadly because we don't want to confuse folks or scare folks, because we really don't have enough data to provide consumption guidance with enough certainty, if that makes sense. When were the samples taken? Sampling happened like usually between like April and October. Whether it was wet or dry, I'm not sure. And it was in 2022. And I think the shellfish samples, the collection, I think bled into 2023 because of capacity and weather and funding and all sorts of other things. Jay, do you have anything to add to that? You might have a better memory than me.
No, I was gonna talk about or ask about something else. But I'll go ahead and do that. Nice presentation, Anna. It's great to see this come to completion. My question's actually for Wes, and I'm wondering if you could give us a preliminary preview. When we get the PFAS ATLs, are they going to change advisories much?
It's hard to say, with the exception of San Francisco Bay with the data we've reviewed thus far. I think there might be a minor change in San Francisco Bay. And again, because we don't often, or at least to this point, we generally don't consider whole body for advisories. It's more, so I guess there's less data we would evaluate under our current program in San Diego Bay using just fillets or the San Diego region, and haven't evaluated that quite yet. We are considering different ways that we could offer advice or at least have information related to whole body. And like the San Francisco Bay report, we have information on sort of the difference, the comparison of whole body to fillet for some of the smaller species and where we have data. So we're trying to incorporate that data so at least it's out there. The fish consumption app might be a new avenue to provide advice for whole body versus fillet. For the advisory posters, it becomes really difficult to include both of those, that messaging. So yeah, I guess to be determined, yeah, how we offer that advice, because our general mandate or mission is to provide advice that allow people to eat as much fish as possible while minimizing the health risks. And unfortunately, for people who prefer eating more than the fillet, that's where a lot of contaminants go to organs. But yeah, so hopefully that somewhat answers your question.
Yeah, that's good. And as we've looked at our RMP data with the existing thresholds, like from Massachusetts, it seems like the mercury and PCB concentrations in general are relative to ATLs are much higher than the PFOS relative to thresholds. So that would, the advice is already probably pretty protective for PFOS. So
yeah, by and large, I think it's protective for at least water bodies that are heavily impacted by, or that are impacted by mercury and PCBs.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be different for water bodies that don't have those impacts, that may have PFAS impacts.
Right. Yeah, of course, the Bay has a lot of mercury and PCBs, so it's
right.
a special case. Yeah.
Right. Fortunately, we don't have some of the very, very high levels that they have where there's more concentrated PFAS manufacturing.
Right.
But unfortunately, there's a lot of PFAS that are used.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks.
Yep.
And then before we go into any other questions, which keep them coming if you got them, I just wanted to flag that while the state board kind of initiated the realignment process and put in funding to get things going, the San Diego region, and shout out to Chad Laughlin, really came in as a true equal partner to this work. So they brought funding, they did monitoring, we co-created documents together, we created these slides together, even though he can't be here today. So I just wanted to acknowledge that this process really was true partnership between the state and regional water boards and the tribal, the advisory committee members representing tribes and communities. So you're stuck with my face today, but Chad and his interpretation of the data and things like that, all of that is really critical for the success of this process. Any other questions? Thoughts? Okay, great. Then maybe we can get you out a little bit early. So, oh, JK, I'm running over. That's fine. Before we close, I wanted to talk a little bit about 2026 meeting dates and topics. We have switched from, instead of quarterly, going to 2 times a year because we're not leading statewide monitoring as much. So my proposal is that we continue to meet over Zoom and continue to meet the last Wednesday of the month in April and October in the morning. And so I'm going to launch a Zoom poll in a second. Anyone here is welcome to share their thoughts. The box is going to pop up. You'll select your responses and the specific questions will also be on the slide. And then press submit and we'll share the results together. So the questions are on the slide. And I am going to find the poll. Okay, and launch it. So you will have to scroll to be able to answer, I think, all questions, but the choices are the same. So the questions are, do you have concerns about continuing to use Zoom as a virtual platform? Do you have concerns about morning meetings, 9:30 to 12:30? Just like we did today, we shortened the meeting because we didn't need to use the full time, and meeting April and October. And so the options are no, yes, no preference, or if you don't want to share your preference, you can abstain. The poll is going. We've got, y'all are on it. 70%, 76% of you have participated. 11 out of 13. Awesome. I'll share the results in a second. 100%. You're the best. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. We can't see them on the Zoom recording, so I'm just going to read the results so we have it for the record. For the first question, do you have concerns about using Zoom? 100% of respondents said no, no concerns with Zoom. Do we have concerns about keeping the same time, 9:30 to 12:30? 12 of the 13 said no concerns, and one person didn't have a preference. So we're good with morning. Do you have concerns about meeting the last Wednesday of the month in April and October? 10 folks said no concerns about that, and 3 said no preference. Admittedly, this is a small sample size of the usual STU participants, but this aligns with the polls that we've been doing the last couple of years. So I feel confident that keeping things as we have will continue to work, and we can always revisit if we choose to. So for meeting topics, we'll continue to share updates on like data processing and availability, particularly as that PFAS data starts to become available. If any new information, exciting things happen about the bioaccumulation program or like that fish consumption app, we'll continue to give updates. We'd love to continue to hear from our regional board partners who may have funding to do bioaccumulation related activities. We'll hear from Angie again next year, hearing from the San Francisco Bay, BITE, and Delta RMP, and anyone else here that isn't part of those groups. You're part of the STU. Welcome. So if you're doing really interesting work and would love to tell about it, we'd love to have you on as a speaker. For the sake of time, I'm gonna skip this, but I'll note that we've already got Gerardo on the agenda for April to talk about the San Francisco Bay Region Community Subsistence Consumption Survey update. If you have other thoughts about presenting on the STU, or you'd like to hear about something and we can help find guest speakers, please let us know. Or if you have something top of mind now, go ahead and add it to the chat and I'll capture it in the notes. But I went too long on the on the Region 9 realignment update. So I'm gonna keep moving forward. To wrap up and adjourn. I didn't capture any action items for the quick updates other than our usual keep them coming. I'll be sure to go through the recording again and add links to whatever was shared in the chat and summarize the updates that you made, Jay, for example. So those will be captured as well. The item 3, Emily's great presentation on the work that they've been doing in the LA region. Emily and I will work together to share slides and link the report either in the notes document, or if it takes a little bit more time to get that report public, then I'll provide an email to the stew when it's ready. And if you heard other action items, please interrupt me. I did my best during the break, but brains be braining. So assistance is welcome. For the AB 762 item, I'm going to follow up with Angie to discuss mapping the data that they have on where signs are posted. I really like the idea about integrating that into our fish consumption app. I think that would be a really great place for it. So I'll work with her on getting the data, making it public, all of that sort of information. I don't think there were action items on the realignment, but I was talking. So if there's anyone have an action item for me for the realignment, please let me know. And then our usual meeting dates. So based on the feedback that we have, I'm actually going to schedule the Zoom meetings and post the registration links on the website so you can register while it's fresh in your brain and you're reviewing the notes doc, and you can download the calendar invites and it'll be ready to go for you in April. And yeah, I'm going to process the meeting recording this afternoon. Hopefully you'll get a notification in the safety workgroup email list when it's ready, along with the slides. Probably early next week, I think, is when that will be able to go out. The notes usually take a little bit longer, so it might take me a week or two to get those out. But as soon as they're ready, I'll send a notice out to the email list and post them on the internet, on our webpage, which is what I said here. Woo, go us. I saw some added notes in the chat. Potential topics. Thanks so much. Thank you for hanging in with me today. It's a small but mighty stew crew, but I love it. And hopefully we'll see you again in April. Take good care, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Anna.
Anna, can you stay on for a minute?
For you, sure.